And hello, everyone, and welcome back to Two Guys in a Bible here on Fulfilled Radio, a voice you can trust. My name is Don K. Preston, and with me again, as usual, is my great friend William Bell over in Memphis, Tennessee. William, great to be with you again as always.
Good to be with you as well, Don.
Hope your week is going okay. Young
Yep,
week so far.
yep. Everything's going very well.
Yeah, same here. Been ultra hectic. I've been trying to get back into the saddle of writing, research writing on my book on the millennium after
Hmm.
the debate last Saturday night. Um, and I've got to tell you, I've still been tired. It was a 6 hour marathon debate, and wow, I've not had an internet debate that lasted that long. So it was quite exhausting, but held up pretty well. And I'm extremely gratified with all of the positive comments from people who watched. Um, Now, I haven't watched it on YouTube, but I have watched, I've read the comments under my, let's see, yesterday and today both. I
Hmm.
gave a brief review of the debate. Very brief, very short. And the comments that I've received there have just been really, really good. So I do appreciate everyone chiming in there. And I've had several people contact me and say, boy, the comments the night of the debate in the comment section were just overwhelmingly in favor of Mike Sullivan and Don Preston. So, and again, I haven't gone back and watched that, read those comments. I'm just going on what people have said. So
Okay.
I understand you didn't get to watch all of it. So we keep our comments relatively brief. I do want to go over another thing or two because today on Facebook, Sam Frost tried to do almost a 180 over
Hmm.
what he has claimed in writing and what he tried to say in the debate, and then accused me of misrepresenting him. And so I want to address that. But although you didn't get to watch the entire debate, William, give us your uh, give us your first impression.
Well, I came in about the time of the Q&A or cross-examination, and my first impression was the passing off of questions by Jeremy Nordier. Is that
Jeremiah.
Jeremiah? Okay. Nordier. And I thought that was rather amusing to watch because he would get a question and then he would ask Sam if he would take the question. And I'm saying, why doesn't he respond? And then when he did respond, he would respond to something that wasn't necessarily totally related to eschatology or the debate itself. And I noticed that even in his closing remarks, he tried to go down a different, um, uh, line. Sam, on the other hand, seemed to divert a lot in his conversations. And one of the things that I was really disappointed with was how Dunny, the moderator, allowed the chaos to go on in that discussion, at least from the parts that I heard. Now, I would take that the opening statements and everything went well and rather
Mm-hmm.
smoothly. Those I have to watch because I heard that on both sides they were great. I mean, when I say both sides, I mean yours and Mike's. I don't
Yeah,
know what the others were like,
they weren't.
but
They weren't very good.
I didn't think so. But at any rate, the kind of antics that Sam Frost was doing reminded me of Tristan a lot in, holding up things in the background while you're talking, uh, talking over you. I mean, he just got in the mic. I guess he liked the way his voice sounded in the microphone. And man, he just kept pushing that over and over again. And then it, turned into kind of a shouting match a little bit just to try to get those guys to listen enough to what was being said. I mean, that was kind of the impression of the antics that I got. Now, in terms of the questions that were put forth, I thought the answers that you all gave were very good and to the point. There were some things that you could obviously see that they were avoiding, and just making what do we call it? The word salads
Yeah.
about some
I
things.
use that very term with one of the answers that Frost gave. It was all over the map. It
Yeah.
literally, I sat there and listened, and at one point I thought back to the debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden when Joe Biden became incoherent almost in one of his responses. And Donald Trump, when it came his turn to speak, he said, I don't have any idea what he said, and I don't think he did either.
Mm.
And
Uh,
I felt that way when Sam Frost was giving some of his quote answers, unquote. It's just like, it's almost gobbledygook.
yeah, I thought Mike did a fantastic job when he was cross-examining him on Daniel. I thought Sam's responses there were just really horrible in terms of, the 70 weeks of Daniel, the fulfillment, et cetera, and then how he, tried to use that. But Mike's comments were very good. His questions and his responses to Sam, even when Sam attempted to rebut on that. But like I said, I need to go really watch it when I have time to sit down and think about it as I'm watching it to hear exactly what's being said, and then I'll be happy to come back and revisit the subject. I watched it until you guys quit, but like I said, there was so much chaos going on. It was a little tough to kind of keep focused on what the questions were. And then of
Yeah.
course, these guys are sending in the questions. I could say this, Dunny went off with a pretty good pocketbook.
He did. Uh, and look, I've had I mean, literally several people contact me both privately and comment on my YouTube channel about how Donnie was, and I don't mean any disrespect to Donnie. He seemed like a nice guy, but when you're going to be a moderator, you have a responsibility.
Mhm.
Your responsibility is to that debate, to keeping order, to make sure everything is kosher, that decorum is followed. And Donnie seemed to be more concerned. This is what countless people said to me. He seemed to be more concerned about the money rolling in than he was, the decorum of the debate.
Mhm.
So I think you're exactly right on that. Uh, you were not alone in feeling that way. Um, I had somebody contact me Monday morning. They were pretty livid, to be honest about it. Their comments about Donnie was he had no business doing the moderator position of that he failed miserably. And again, I'm not taking a shot. I'm reporting what was said to me. And with this individual, kind of got through venting to me. I said, if that's the way you feel about it, you need to contact Donnie Dubinsky and you need to tell him how you feel. Well, he did. He hadn't told me if he got a response or not, but I've had other people contact me and express the same identical sentiment that Donnie did not do a proper job as a moderator. And I tried to tell Donnie that Sam and Jeremiah were not going to keep the rules. I knew they would not. And yet the rules were very clear. They were in our negotiation back and forth. They were written down in the private message of Facebook, but the rules were very, very clear. Neither party will interrupt the other while they're talking. They
Mhm.
will not talk over them and interrupt them. Well, anybody that watched the debate knows that both Jeremiah and Sam both, that's all they did. They wouldn't hardly give me or Mike the opportunity to speak without interrupting. And so they were in clear violation of the rules. But it's, if I can bring a third party in here, it's a whole lot like Ed Stevens. We had written rules for our written debate, and he hasn't followed one of them.
Hmm.
Well, followed one or two of them. But as far as the decorum and following the rules and what have you, he hasn't done so. And when I pointed it out, he just said, well, you're not going to bully me and what have you. Well, I'm not trying to bully him. I'm trying to get him to obey the rules. And if that's bullying, I guess I'm, guilty, but that's not the point. The point of it is there were mutually agreed rules between Jeremiah, Sam, Mike, and me that we would not interrupt each other, we would not talk over each other, et cetera, et cetera. And person after person after person says Donnie Dubinsky should have muted the mics of both Jeremiah and Sam Frost. And the only time to unmute them was when they're talking in their time.
Exactly.
And they're exactly right. That was, in my estimation, and I think in all fairness to Donnie, I think he failed in that responsibility.
Yeah, you're in a debate. It's obvious that the reason for the debate is you have two opposing views. So when you're giving your point of view and then someone wants to interrupt you and say, well, no, I got to talk here because that's wrong.
Yeah.
He's saying something that's wrong. So I got to interrupt. No, you do not have to interrupt. You're supposed to sit back and be respectful, listen to what they say. How can you even hear the position and the points that are being made if you're going to interrupt and talk over it because the first thing you hear is something that you don't agree with? Well, the whole reason you came to the debate is because you got differences of agreement.
Exactly.
And you have to be willing to listen to those differences so that you can respond appropriately, but also be respectful to the audience so that the audience gets the opportunity to understand what's being said. Once they come in and start interrupting, then the audience just loses it totally for the most part in terms of what's being said or what you're trying to say. And then the other part of that is it will cause you to lose track of what you're saying. You get off of your point sometimes, and that just really makes for a horrible situation that doesn't edify the people who are involved.
And you know as well as
We'll
I
see.
do, that's part of a tactic by someone
Yeah.
interrupting. They hope to throw you off. They hope to derail your chain of thought and train of thought because they know they're not going to be able to answer.
Hmm.
And I have to say, William, and I called Sam Frost out about this because especially when Mike Sullivan was talking during one of the sessions, I've forgotten exactly at what point it was, Sam Frost would reach back and grab a book and put it right in front of the camera. Grab another one, put it right in front of the camera, and
That's
then
that's what.
point to it, point to it. You
Yeah,
know,
that's why I said it was these Tristan tactics.
yeah, it's Tristan Gabriel tactics. And of course, in my debate with Tristan Gabriel, we also had written rules that would not be done. But Tristan Gabriel doesn't believe in keeping rules. He believes in theatrics. And that's what Sam Frost was doing over and over and over. Both of them did it because you saw uh, over and over, Jeremiah would just go, oh, put his head in his hands and just shake his head. And Sam would do the same thing. And they would literally sit there laughing and scoffing. Well, where's the decorum in that?
Mhm.
And and again, countless numbers of people have contacted me and said that was really pretty shameful on the part of both Jeremiah and the part of Sam Frost because of the way they acted after promising, giving their word, none of that. But all they did from the beginning of the debate to the very end of the debate basically was theatrics.
Yeah,
So
it's very, very unprofessional. And if you're going into a debate and you're confident about your position, then you want that person to give the best that they have because you're prepared to respond to it, and you're not going to try to step the issues. You're just going to answer straightforwardly and let your response, you know, do all the work. It's like they used to say with the yellow pages: let your fingers do the walking, etc. And so in the debate, let your argument do the talking, and that's it.
well, and I called Sam down on it several times with all of his theatrics with the books, you know, because he was doing that, of course, to try to give the impression here's the final word on this
Hmm.
issue.
Hmm.
Here's, I mean, let me see if I can do this here. This is all he would do, as if that answered any objection, any comment, uh, any position that Mike or I might do. And of course, I called him out on it, and I said, Sam, demonstrate a little more maturity. I said, you're being childish. That's the word I used. And it didn't phase him even a little bit. And when Mike was done, I, I picked it up and I said, Sam, you do know I could hold up commentary after commentary after commentary who takes a totally different position from you. And I could do a theatrics. These are not my actual words, but that's the whole point. But
Yeah.
I said I could do that too. But that is not the proper way to do a debate. Didn't slow him down even a little bit.
Yeah.
So,
Probably
uh,
made it a little worse.
well, it probably did, if anything. But what you're saying is absolutely true, William. And that's what I'm saying. Of all the comments, and look, like I said, I have received some wonderful, wonderful private messages of support, encouragement, of people just saying, uh, Mike's first presentation, your first presentation sealed the deal. That was the end of the debate. And Sam and Jeremiah couldn't do anything about it, and they didn't even try. I thought Mike's presentation on demonstrating the flow of Daniel and the interrelationship between the Olivet Discourse, I thought it was a master class.
Hmm.
I thought it was absolutely fantastic. And so,
I think I
and
read somebody else's comment that pretty much said that. They mentioned that about both of the opening presentations that you guys made. So
oh,
that's
I've
one
had,
reason why I definitely want to go back and
oh, it
watch it.
was what Mike did was outstanding. And you know how this goes. He contacted me early on and he said, Don, I don't think I can do just 23 minutes. I'm at like 36 minutes in my opening. I said, you don't have 36 minutes, Mike. I said, you just got to cut and slash. That's all there is to it. And of course, I was struggling with the same thing. I initially developed an affirmative on the Great Tribulation and the resurrection.
Mm.
And I thought it was extremely powerful. And I still do, as a matter of fact. And I'm probably going to make a video of it and give it, and I'll post it on YouTube and what have you. But I thought I had it down to like 19 minutes so that I could spend, 4 more minutes addressing some of the things that Jeremiah and Sam had said. So I had my wife come over to the office, and she's sitting right over here with a stopwatch. And I said, okay, here we go. 26 and a half minutes later, she's going, and I'm going, what? She said, I thought you only had 23 minutes. Well, it turned out we had 24. I said, I had it down to 19 minutes. She said, no, you did not. You were at 26 minutes. And I go, ah. So I had to go back, cut and slash, cut and slash, cut and slash. And then I got to thinking, okay, I really, really, really do want to be able to address some of the things that Jeremiah and Sam might say in their openings. So I'm going to do another one. And I did it on the wedding, the messianic wedding, and the resurrection.
Mhm.
And I think when you watch and listen to what I presented, I think you'll like it really, really well. A whole lot of people have commented on it that it was, well, like I said, some people have just simply said that it was game over at that point.
Yeah.
No matter what Jeremiah, no matter what Sam might say. And here's the point, and I made this point at least 2 or 3 times in the debate, William. Neither Jeremiah or Sam said one single word in response to Mike's opening or to mine.
Hmm.
Not a word.
Now that's really sad, because that's the whole point is to address the proposition and the arguments made to support the proposition.
Exactly.
That's what they should be responding to.
They ought to have been taking real good notes. They
Hmm.
ought to have been saying, well, now Don made the following point, and Mike started out in here in Daniel 2 and blah, 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 but that has nothing to do whatsoever with the Olivet Discourse. Well, in the first place, they couldn't tear Mike's presentation apart. That's just all there is to it. Um, and what's interesting here, William, someone today, no, no, yesterday, submitted the entire debate to both chat and Grok. And they asked for a fair, impartial, unbiased analysis of the debate. strong points of each side, who won, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
And both Chat and Grok came back and said Mike Sullivan and Don Preston won this debate. One of them, I've forgotten which one it was, said they won the debate hands down. Well, I called attention to that in my interaction with Sam Frost yesterday and today. And of course, he just went ballistic. Well, that's just nothing but biased. You get out of it what you want. I said, no, the request was fair, impartial, unbiased report. We got it according to Chat and according to Grok. And so Sam's only response to that was, well, is that the same Grok that carried some Nazi propaganda language just recently? And his main response to it, William, this is a killer. It's going to blow you away. When I pointed out, Chat says Don Preston, Mike Sullivan won. He said, Chat also says full preterism is heresy. And of course, I responded to that. That point is totally irrelevant. It says nothing about the analysis that Chat made or that Grok made. It's a total misdirection. And of course, and I didn't get a chance.
Well, that makes it even more impactful, because if Chat and Grok says that full preterism is heresy, and then turn right back around and say you guys won the debate, how does that make them?
Yeah. Well, Sam has spent yesterday and today doing nothing but ridiculing Chat and Grok.
Mm.
That's all he can do. And then, irony of ironies, William, today somebody said, well, they were making comment on the end of the age. And Sam goes, ask Grok what the end of the age refers to. Well, Grok came by and said it's the end of human history. Well, I'm pretty sure it was a biased way of asking the question.
Mm-hmm.
I've been thinking about, re-asking the question. But anyway, Sam came back and said, see, there's Grok's answer. That's super Grok for you right there. And so I responded and I said, isn't it amazing? Sam has spent 2 days ridiculing Grok, but now when Grok gives an answer that he likes, it's the final answer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but that is Sam Frost, utter desperation, utter inconsistency. And it was manifested throughout the entirety of the debate. It was, there were times, I must confess, that I literally had to shake my head. I probably shouldn't have, but I literally had to shake my head in bewilderment and wonderment at some of the things that I was hearing from both Jeremiah and Sam Frost. I mean, this was just literally unbelievable. You and I, down through the years, we have said, and see, where's my notebook? What did I do with it? Well, anyway, it's buried. You and I have said many, many times down through the years that in our controversies at different times with different people, that they just made things up out of thin air.
Mm-hmm.
They presented positions that you've never heard before, that you've never read before. And of course, I pointed out that one of those positions is Sam Frost's position on 2 Thessalonians chapter 1. Sam Frost made the argument, and he makes the argument. Oh, I put his books up today. That when Paul says, to you who are being troubled, relief from the Greek word anesis, with us when the Lord Jesus is revealed from heaven in flaming fire, taking vengeance on those that do not know God. And Sam Frost said that relief there is the same glory that Jesus received when he ascended up on high in the ascension. Well, that's a total perversion of the Greek. And in all of the commentators that I have read in my research on anesis and thlipsis, two antonyms, I have never read one single commentary, not one, that has ever made the argument that Sam does. Now, some years ago, William, if you remember, I debated Sam on Chris Arnzen's program, Iron Sharpens Iron.
Yeah, I remember.
And he made that argument all at the same time saying Preston's taking positions that cannot be found in any ancient writer. No creed. It's not in history. It is nowhere to be found. By the way, he used the same argument. Full preterism is not in any ancient creed. It's not in any ancient commentary. It's completely, totally unknown. And he kept saying, it's nowhere. It's nowhere. It's nowhere. With all the gestures. I'm doing that to mimic him. And so he kept saying that it's nowhere, not found anywhere. Well, I made the point. Well, it's his position in 2 Thessalonians chapter 1 is nowhere.
Yeah,
so what did he do?
heard
Sunday night or Saturday night, he said, Don Preston, you're lying. You are a liar. I said, okay, bring forth the commentator. Well, he tried to drag one up. I forgot. Oh my goodness, I've forgotten the name of the commentator, but he used this on one other occasion on Facebook. I happen to have the commentary. I read the commentator. It doesn't say anything even remotely resembling what Sam Frost says. So in the debate Saturday night, I said, Sam, I've read that commentary. It doesn't say what you say it does. You're making this up. You're a liar, Don Preston. I'm going to expose you as the liar that you are over and over and over. And then he said that he and Jeremiah were going to have a program Sunday afternoon. And he said, I'm going to expose you as a liar, Don Preston. And by the way, Grok and Chat both commented on how Sam Frost lost his cool.
Ah, wow.
Yeah, calling me a liar. Well, that's exactly what was happening. He lost his cool. Violated the rules, no name calling, no decorum. So anyway, now I didn't get a chance to listen to the program that he and Jeremiah did to review the debate. But I would be real positive to make the following comment. If Sam Frost had the commentaries that take his position on 2 Thessalonians chapter 1, he would have been typing them all over Facebook. Don Preston says, no commentator takes my position. Here's the commentator. Here's the page number, et cetera, et cetera. Not a word. Not a word. So I'm waiting, Sam Frost, if you happen to watch this program tonight, I'm still waiting for you to produce the commentators, the reputable scholarly commentators that express your view of 2 Thessalonians chapter 1. Let's see if that's forthcoming. If I were a betting man, and he kept making a point, trying to make a point, William, he said, Don Preston, have you read every single commentary that there is? And I tried to say, but he kept interrupting me. Well, no, I haven't read every single commentary, but I've read a ton of them, especially in 2 Thessalonians chapter 1. I've read in excess of 60 commentaries on 2 Thessalonians chapter 1. So I should have said, I've never found one, and I finally managed to get that out without, through his interruptions and what have you. But I should have, well, I didn't have time because my time was out. But I wanted to say, Sam Frost, you're saying full preterism is not found anywhere in any ancient church writing or anything. I wanted to say that because, according to Kenneth Gentry and according to other sources as well, other scholars, we currently have slightly over 10% of the ancient church writings that have even been translated. So when Sam Frost says there's not one single ancient writer that mentions full preterism, how does he know? Has he read every single ancient church writer? Some sources say there are well over 1 million pages of ancient church writings that haven't been translated. So for Sam Frost to say, Nobody ever said anything about full preterism. All that he could truthfully and rightfully say, well, in the church writings that we have translated, we have no full preterist writings.
Yeah, and you have to remember that some writings were destroyed deliberately. And
Absolutely.
and if you're talking about, the Jews after 70 AD, they certainly were interested in trying to remove any truth that, would be taught regarding the fulfillment of prophecy related to them, and trying to, uphold their name and their, worship and cultic practices in view of the fact that the temple was gone. I mean, that
Yeah.
was the biggest argument that could be made against them. And so anything that supported that in terms of showing the fulfillment of prophecy and the teachings, they were out to destroy. And they did destroy a lot of that information.
No question about that historically. But again, that's just an example of Sam Frost drama show. He wanted to make this huge show that we have absolutely none, period, none writings, full preterist writings in any of the early church writers. Therefore, full preterism is wrong. And then when I make the comment, which is true in my reading experience, that there is no commentator, at least that I've ever read. And by the way, I actually did a grok and a chat search for any commentator, any reputable commentator that took Sam Frost's position. I still haven't found one. But of course, all he'll do is ridicule that. But it's all he's got. Ridicule is about all Sam Frost has left these days. And Jeremiah is just following hard on his heels of just ridiculing. I won't mention who it was, but I will say it's a good friend of mine. Called me up yesterday morning and he said, have you ever seen such a display of outright arrogance and ignorance on the part of anyone as that displayed by Jeremiah Nortier? Now, I'm just reporting what was said to me in a conversation. I didn't solicit the conversation. Call came out of the blue. And this is this is how he started the conversation, by the way. I was like, whoa. So there is no question that on the part of an awful lot of people, Jeremiah and Sam stepped over the line. They abandoned all decorum. They abandoned all semblance of respect for Mike and me. And that came glaringly obvious, as we continued in Sam's theatrics, holding up the book and, thumping on it, and then putting his mouth on his microphone and mumbling stuff that I couldn't even understand, to be honest about it.
Yeah, yeah.
But again, it's all theatrics. There's no substance to that. And the great question is, what does that prove? Well, first of all, it proves that you don't have an answer for what's being said. And secondly, it proves that you don't want people hearing what's being said by your opponent. If you really believe you had the truth, you'd let them talk, as you were saying a few moments ago. You would let them talk, you would let them express their view, give their evidence for their view, and then respond to it. But no, neither Jeremiah or Sam were willing to let people hear the evidence. They constantly spoke over both Mike and me. They interrupted us constantly and engaged in their theatrics, of their head in their hand and just shaking their head and thumping the books and put the books up to the camera and what have you. That was the main takeaway I had, separate and apart from their utter failure to even address Mike and my openings and the arguments that I made. Jeremiah let it be known in his opening presentation that he had no intentions of discussing the proposition. The proposition was Matthew 24 and 25, the Olivet Discourse, is a divided discourse. And he says, this debate is about the subject of the Son of Man. Well, no, it's about the Olivet Discourse, as Mike very well said. So it's just one of those type of things. Somebody commented to me on one Facebook page. They said, boy, Don, you've been more animated in the last 3 debates that I've seen you in than normal. And, I just responded. I said, well, sometimes, and of course, I try to keep it within the bounds of decorum. But sometimes you have to, what does Proverbs say? You have to answer a fool according to his folly.
Yep.
Sometimes you have to do that. And I'm not going to stoop to their level. I am going to call order on their theatrics, which I did Saturday night. I called point of order. And I called on them not to interrupt us, to let us talk. Did no good whatsoever. Now, Mike and I will undoubtedly get into the substantive of the things that were said in our program tomorrow night on preterist apologetics. So for those of you that want to really dig into the substance, the doctrines that were discussed, and if you want us to see, and of course, let's face this, and you and I both know that this is true since we've both been in a bunch of debates. There's never, ever, ever enough time to address every doctrinal point that your opponent raises. Never can. You always look back and say, oh, man, wish I'd have said that. Well, you didn't have time to say that. They didn't have time. We didn't have time. So I'm not pointing the finger at them, especially, although it's certainly true that they did not even attempt to answer our main points. But the point of it is, Mike and I will be going over his opening presentation, which was focused on Daniel and its relationship to the Olivet Discourse. And let me say this again. Mike's opening presentation was a masterclass. It was absolutely outstanding. And to be honest about it, I feel the same way about my presentation on the wedding and the resurrection. So I think there were 2 outstanding presentations to substantiate our position, to demonstrate that the Olivet Discourse has nothing whatsoever to do with the end of human history. There's nothing in it. There's nothing in Scripture about the end of human history. And yet, Sam Frost and Jeremiah, they never really attempted. Now, I will give Sam Frost a tiny bit of credit of trying to make an argument on Luke chapter 21. Were you able to listen to him? Did you?
If you mentioned the argument, I might recall it, but
okay,
as I'm sitting here, I can't recall what he tried to say.
Well, since you only came in for the cross, then you didn't hear it. Okay. But instead of doing any argumentation on Matthew 24:25, none whatsoever, Sam goes to Luke chapter 21 and tries to develop that Luke chapter 21 is about the end of human history. Yeah. And in order to do that, he just had to assume, without any proof whatsoever, that when Jesus talked about distress upon the earth and fear upon all men, because of what was coming upon the earth, then they shall see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven. Sam, who at one time knew apocalyptic language pretty well, demonstrated that he did. He took that language in a rigidly literalistic way. It's got to be Jesus as a 5'5" Jewish man in a physical body riding on a literal cumulus cloud. And then he made, William, an absolutely astounding comment when Jesus said that these be the days of vengeance in which all things must be fulfilled. And he said, Jerusalem shall fall by the edge of the sword, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. And Sam Frost took what is an extremely common dispensational position. He said what that passage means. And he said it's not a time statement. But he said when the last Gentile is converted, that's when the Lord comes. I I really, 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 really wanted to wax an elephant on that. Unfortunately, you know, I had my presentation, my first presentation coming up. Didn't have time to get into it. I tried to get into some of the things that he said. That is such an egregious abuse of the Greek. Jerusalem shall be trodden down until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. It doesn't even come close to saying until the last Gentile is converted. There's nothing about the conversion of the Gentiles in the text. Jerusalem shall be trodden down until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. Well, the word trodden down is from the Greek word pateo. It's a cognate, obviously, because it's a future tense.
Mm-hmm.
But pateo has nothing whatsoever, no lexicon that I've ever read, okay? No grammar that I've ever read, nobody that I've ever read. Now, do the dispensationalists say, oh yeah, the times of the Gentiles are the times in which Jerusalem is under Gentile control? Interestingly enough, Jerry Falwell used to say the times of the Gentiles ended in 1967. Well, that doesn't have anything to do with the conversion of the Gentiles. So Frost was taking a position. I have to say, once again, Sam Frost was taking a position that in all my years of reading, and I told Sam Frost, he kept alluding to all these commentators and he said, you know, he's pointing back to all these commentators and all the books in his library. Okay, well, I got a pretty fair library myself. You do too. But he kept talking about all the commentators, all the commentators. Well, in all of the commentators that I've read, and I did an extensive deep dive research on Luke 21:24 several years ago, and the Greek word pateo. Not once does it ever refer to the conversion of anyone. It is a word that denotes violent oppression. And when it's used of war, it means active military conflict and oppression. And that's exactly what he's talking about, Luke 21:24.
Yeah, it's used the same way in what is it Ezekiel 30?
I believe that's one of the texts. It's certainly used in Lamentations. It's used in Isaiah 63 as the writer looks back at the downtrodden of Edom. He has trodden down Edom in the winepress of his wrath. And again, Lamentations chapter 2, he has trodden Jerusalem down as an enemy. That's the only way it's ever used in the Bible.
Yeah, Ezekiel, not Ezekiel. Yeah, it is Ezekiel. Ezekiel 30, 2 and 3.
2 and 3? I thought maybe it was verse 9, but anyway, go ahead.
Let's see. I think it's 2. He says, okay. Woe to the day, for the day is near, even the day of the Lord is near. It will be a day of clouds, the time of the Gentiles. And that's certainly talking about bringing in, foreign armies, the Babylonians against Jerusalem.
Oh, yeah. Okay. You were talking about the term times of the Gentiles.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, indeed. Yeah. Ezekiel 30, 2 and 3. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I thought you were talking about pateo.
Well, no, not pateo particularly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's in Revelation.
Yep. Revelation 11.
Yeah.
Yeah. The holy city shall be trodden down for 42 months. Mm-hmm. That's pateo.
And that's the parallel to Luke 21.
That's exactly right. It is a direct parallel with Luke chapter 21 and verse 24. So here's Sam Frost, who constantly reminds us that he's this great Greek scholar, right? He told somebody on the internet just the other day, I wasn't in that conversation, but somebody commented about the Greek. And Sam Frost says, well, I've been reading the Greek for 30 years and I've been reading it academically for the last 20. Well, then why do you abuse it so much? That's my question. And of course, then he mocks me because do you have an actual doctorate? Nope, sure don't. And just like I said in the debate the other night, I don't make any claim to be a Greek scholar. Nope, absolutely do not make such a claim. I tell people all the time, I know just enough Greek to make me dangerous. And you can
You
take
know,
that out.
I read that comment. I think it was on Facebook. I don't know. It might have been someone conversing with Gary DeMar, but they were talking about, your honorary doctorate
Yeah,
and how people criticize that, and they brought up the fact that Chuck Swindoll had an honorary doctorate, and people recognize that. It's only in this little anti-preterist circle that people want to ridicule, your credentials on that.
yeah,
And but otherwise, because I've seen people in other areas of life when they get these honorary doctorates, people respect them for it. But these guys, it's like it's not saying you haven't done work to earn that.
right.
The reason you got it is because you did the work to earn it.
Well,
And
I well remember in the points that you're making, Chuck Swindoll had 4 honorary doctorates. Nobody ridicules that.
mhm.
And I remember back in the day before his quote fall from grace, Bill Cosby was given several honorary doctorates and was known as Dr. Bill Cosby,
Hmm.
you know? So it's like you said, uh, in fact, my, my wife was commenting on how this little clique and group of people just constantly attack me every single day and attack Mike. And she said, well, Don, here's the point. They have Preston derangement syndrome, just like they have Trump derangement syndrome. Now they have Preston derangement syndrome because they're just constantly, every single day they attack you. And that's pretty much mine. But I just busted up when she said Preston derangement syndrome. I'll have to use that some more, undoubtedly. Okay. Well, any other comments that you'd like to make, William, with the limited time that you had to listen in to watch the debate and what have you?
Like I said, it was late that night. It was a 6 hour stint. I remember one time I got pulled into a discussion that I spent 6 hours. I wish I could find it online. It was 3 guys that were trying to attack the preterist view, and I think they eventually pulled the discussion off the air. But nevertheless, I was there when they were saying, "Okay, it's 5 hours. It's time to wrap this up." And then the next thing we know, we're into about 6 hours on the discussion.
Yeah.
But I really apologize that I haven't had an opportunity to listen to it at this point. But I know I'm going to have some time when you're talking about 5 hours where I got to really
Oh,
sit and watch this.
well, I know
Um,
that you are extremely busy. You are exactly like me. Both of us are just extremely busy. So, uh, no need to apologize. That's just the way our lives are in these hectic times. I'm glad that you got to watch a little bit of it. I appreciate the input that you have offered us for this evening. And so let's shift gears. We're not going to get much time in here, but last week, William, we talked about Galatians chapter 5, verse 5. We, according to the Spirit, eagerly await the hope of righteousness. And we talked about how that relates to Daniel chapter 9. We talked a little bit about that, how that impacts the doctrine of when, oh, pardon me, of when the 70 weeks of Daniel 9 would come to an end. You made a couple of observations, I think, in the few moments that we have left here, that we can expand on it a little bit and address it a little bit, so hopefully sufficiently enough that it will cause people to want to study the subject more. But, William, we are told, I have friends, you have friends, I have preterist friends, people that I admire, people that I respect, but they tell us, well, the 70 weeks ended in 34 or 35 AD, with the conversion of the Gentiles or the stoning of Stephen. I get, both of those answers from different people from different times. And when I was studying, researching to write one of my little books, Seal It, Vision and Prophecy, I encountered that argument, and that's the position of Gary DeMar, or at least it has been through the years. It's the position of Kenneth Gentry. It's the position of several others. I think even my good friend Robert Cruikshank has taken that position before. I'm not sure if he still holds that position, but I know that he has. So like I said, got good friends, people that I highly respect. I certainly wouldn't fall out with them about them, but I don't believe that view will actually hold water. So, William, what are your initial thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, I'd say that, the prophecy definitely takes this to the time of bringing in everlasting righteousness, and that would be the time of the new heavens and new earth in terms of consummation. Now, we would understand that, righteousness begins with the beginning of the gospel being preached, but in terms of the consummation, that's going to take place at the time of the arrival of the new heavens and new earth. And then also in the text, it's referring to the time when the city and the sanctuary would be destroyed. So how is that, at a time of, Stephen, or the time that the Gentiles hear the gospel for the first time? That's just not going to work. They're still there. And as a matter of fact, Stephen preached in, his message that, or was being charged that Jesus of Nazareth was going to come and destroy this place and change the customs which were delivered to Moses. So he's acknowledging right there that Daniel 9 hasn't been fulfilled because it was the time for the destruction of the city and the sanctuary. And that takes it beyond both of those time frames that have been suggested thus far. And again, mentioning that that's the time when on the wings of abomination. So you got the time for the abomination of desolation. So I would see at least those points just totally arguing against any prior time for fulfillment, prior to the consummation in 70 AD and the fall of the temple, the end of those sacrifices, etc.
Well, let me interject and play the devil's advocate here. Kenneth Gentry takes the position, and again, I know that Gary DeMar has taken the same position. They take the position, well, the actual destruction of the city and the sanctuary is not confined to the 70 weeks, but rather the fate of the city is determined within the 70 weeks. And after the expiration of the 70 weeks is when the city and the temple actually falls. So they're saying, no. The fate of the city is determined within the 70, but the final destruction comes 30 years later, 40 years later.
But the text says in verse 24, 70 weeks are determined for your people and for your holy city to finish the transgression. So we're talking about the consummation of that, and Jesus told them in Matthew 23, fill up the measure of your father's guilt. And he clearly tied that to the destruction of the temple and, the people within that generation. Your house is left to you desolate. So he's showing that the transgression is not finished until the time when their house was made desolate.
Yeah, I know the very first time I ran onto that argument, that the 70 weeks would end, and then after the 70 weeks, the city and the temple, would be destroyed. I was like, no, you're arguing that the fate of the city would not be determined until the 70 weeks, and then the destruction is after it. But Daniel 9 is the determination of the fate of the city.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to wait until the arrival of the 70 weeks to determine the fate of the city. Daniel 9 is that determination. The people of the prince that will come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. That's the determination.
Right.
And so that's one of the things that kind of bothered me initially the very first time I heard that view, because I said, no, that ignores the fact that Daniel 9 is determining the fate of the city. Not only that, how many other passages in the Tanakh determine the fate of the city for AD 70? You know,
Exactly.
I mean,
I
they're
mean,
just
Jeremiah.
Jeremiah, Zephaniah, Malachi. I mean, you don't have to wait until the first century to get the determination and the pronouncement of the judgment of AD 70 judgment of Jerusalem. That was determined long, long, long before the first century. Matter of fact, it's interesting to me. It's Zechariah chapter 2, I think it is. Rabbi Akiba, who was one of the most famous first century rabbis. Rabbi Akiba, when William, if you remember, is recorded in Josephus, the gate of the city swung open, or of the temple swung open. If you remember, Josephus tells us about that, and there was mixed emotions about that within the camps, the respective camps. Josephus says some of the rabbis took that as a great sign that God was opening the way for his heavenly armies. But Rabbi Akiba said, "Close your gates, O Zion. We know." Now, this is on another occasion than that. Okay, I'm getting the chronology a little bit messed up. But as early as 30 AD, Rabbi Akiba predicted the fall of Jerusalem in AD 70, and he quoted from Zechariah chapter 2. That was his text. So we know that there was an expectation among, shall we say, the wise and the discerning rabbis that destruction was coming, because they knew that the Old Testament prophesied about it. Not necessarily because they looked around and saw the signs of the time, because they were still in peace, certainly in 30 AD. But they knew it because the Old Testament prophesied of it. And because Daniel gives us the countdown. F.F. Bruce, in his little book, The Time is Fulfilled, not a very big book. It's about this thick. I mean, very short book. Commenting on Mark 1:15, Matthew chapter 4, verse 17, in which both John and Jesus said, "The time is fulfilled, the kingdom of heaven is at hand." F.F. Bruce says that terminology, the time is fulfilled. He says the word time there is a Greek word, kairos, divinely appointed time. And then both John and Jesus use the present tense or perfect tense, saying that appointed time has arrived. And he says what this means, that there was some divinely appointed time that the Jews were familiar with, that the Jews had done their calculations, and they knew that the time had arrived for the kingdom to come. And he said there's only one Old Testament prophecy that gives any kind of a chronological countdown that you could get to the first century. And he said that's Daniel 9.
Who was it in the debate that tried to negate that? Was that Sam?
Yep.
Who tried to make this general comment about Kairos?
Yep.
And said it was
just time. It's just time. Mike and I both just about keeled over. And this is what I mean when I say it's so troubling to read so many of Sam Frost's comments these days, because he tells us all the time that he's this great Greek scholar. And yet here's the word kairos that absolutely does not mean time broadly considered, generally widely considered. Chronos is that word. And anybody who has trenchant synonyms of the New Testament knows this is the truth. Okay? Anybody knows kairos means the divinely appointed time. It's not just time. It's not what time is it on my clock or, whatever. It is the divinely appointed time. So for Sam Frost in this debate, of course, he knew that neither Mike or I had time to respond to it. He just throws that flippant claim, utterly false claim out there, that kairos just simply means time. And again, knowing that we didn't have time to respond, boy, that's just bad. I mean, that is really real, and it's very revealing as far as I'm concerned. So, okay, William, we are completely out of time for this evening. Thanks so much for your comments and your observations based on what little you were able to watch and listen to. Perhaps we can pick it up again next week and analyze it a little bit more in depth. So,
alrighty.
In the meantime, folks, thanks again for joining us here on Two Guys in a Bible, a voice you can trust. And with that, I will say good night. God bless.
Good night.
All right, man. Yeah.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Good night.
Yeah. Good night.